Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, John Middlekauff, former NFL scout, is about to stop by. But before we start with John, I want you to grab your smartphone, download the Game Time app. A new feature called Game Time Picks makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. So Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Takes the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account. The code is Colin for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. COLIN is the redeem code, $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, former NFL scout, 3 and Out podcaster, John Middlekauff of The Volume, Week 1 reaction presented by Uber Eats. Get almost anything for game day. All right, let's start with Tom Brady's debut. Good God, Cleveland's a disaster. You know, I was sitting there thinking as I'm watching that game, if you're going to sign a contract to a quarterback to a guaranteed contract, which Kirk Cousins got one, and Deshaun Watson, I not only want a great player, I want a great leader. I want great health. I want an ascending player. He's virtually none of those. I mean, it's just typical Cleveland. What's ironic, after watching Baker today, Baker's a much better quarterback today, John, than Deshaun Watson. I mean, Baker was a rock star today. I'm sitting there and I'm like, we know it's not Stefanski. We know he's a really bright guy and a good play caller. I mean, I don't even know what Deshaun Watson is. I mean, changing uniforms. He's a bottom 10 quarterback.
You know what's funny is I had on the Redskins or the Commanders game on a little TV, and I wrote down about 10 minutes before we jumped on, Baker's in a different universe, not just as a thrower, his touch. I mean, Deshaun's throwing balls into the stands constantly, but his swag, the way he carries himself, the way his teammates, and even as a playmaker, I mean, it's not like Baker's some elite athlete, but moving around. Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott signed the same contract, essentially right. $230 million guaranteed. How could you pay a player who has character question marks and who has a short resume? I mean, I'm getting texts constantly. I'm sure you are. It has to go down immediately as one of the worst deals in the history of pro sports. You look at Dak, has his flaws in January. Very consistent regular season player, super smart guy, high character leader. Everyone that knows him like him. Deshaun Watson, I was out on him last year. Today, what an embarrassment. Where's the playmaking, Colin? He doesn't make any plays.
Well, and he was never a hyper athletic, or he was never a hyper accurate thrower. That was always the beat on him. I can remember his first year, everybody liked him. He would skip throws. He's not a pretty thrower. He's not an easy thrower. Everything looks like it's a struggle downfield. He was a wildly dynamic athlete. You take that out, and I mean, he's no more athletic today than Dak Prescott. And I've always thought Dak's sort of a B athlete and a B arm. But I was watching Dak today, and I'm like, oh, Dak's a much, much better player than Deshaun Watson. And the thing about Dak is a guy that even when he has his faults, you do feel like he is the soul of the organization. He's the soul. Sure. Deshaun Watson, if you went through that locker room and asked half the guys, you could move off the contract. So I look at Cleveland and I think desperate franchises, desperate owners do dumb things. They're sunk. You can't go anywhere in the AFC with Deshaun Watson.
Well, the reason they won 11 games was Joe Flacco last year.
That's right.
He resurrected him, and they refused to re-sign him because they didn't want any drama. Let's face it, if I was a Browns fan today, I wouldn't want to watch this anymore. He as just a consumer, I didn't have any money on the game or anything, just an awful, terrible watch. Like, who wants to consume that player? Like you said, he used to be able to scramble around and do things. That's gone. Listen, has he lost his confidence? 100%. But whatever that is that we witnessed today was a fish out of water. There are going to be former players, I'm sure, that come to his defense. Well, they were missing offensive linemen. They gave him $230 million to elevate above that as a playmaker, and that's gone.
I thought, I wrote this down. I thought Mike McCarthy, in terms of play calling today, I thought it was sensational. They had a drive in the second quarter. They did everything. I mean, it was shovel passes, it was screens, it was counters and traps. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, this is art. Like, we bang on Mike McCarthy, but he's a 500 playoff coach. He's a 60% winning coach. And you could say, well, he had Aaron Rodgers. Well, he's also had Cooper Rush and Dak, guys who are not considered superstar throwers of the football. I thought Dallas today, and I had my questions, looked so buttoned up offensively. I thought the play calling was good. I thought Dak was in a zone. Listen,
The defense was awesome.
excellent pass rush. Listen, I don't want to pay Dak 60 million, but good God, 230 was guaranteed. So it takes out the salary cap issues when you guarantee the whole damn thing. And my take is, if you're going to have a quarterback with questions, just guarantee it. Like I saw this week, the Niners converted somebody's contract to a signing bonus. Like, if you can guarantee the stuff and get it, help you out in the salary cap. But that, if you'd have told me one team today played flawless football, and it was the Dallas Cowboys in Cleveland with a rookie left tackle against Myles Garrett, it would have been one of the bottom guesses I would have had. That's as good as Dallas can play offensively and defensively to me.
How about Jerry? There's no chance they just got this deal done late Saturday night. He stole the morning with this announcement of this contract. You talk about a showman, and then they answered the bell. The first thing that came, because there had been rumblings, when you say this last week, like something might happen here. He might get a contract extension. Yeah. I thought the moment that contract was extended, I'm like, I think that's good for Mike McCarthy, because the success Dak has had under him, right? Mike's calling the plays, unlike a lot of these coaches all over the league that just are CEO head coaches. So he directly impacts him. And if Dak continues to have success, let's say they lose in the second round, because I had pivoted on McCarthy. He was easy to beat up a couple years ago, and then he just kept rattling off 12 wins. And then we're anointing guys like Mike McDaniel, who've never won a big game in their entire life and can't win the division. I think the Cowboys have a pretty good chance to win the division this year. Hell, I picked them before the season, like them just as much now. But if they win 11, 12 games again, you're going to pivot off the guy who's your offensive play caller. And like you said, proven to be a pretty good head coach. Okay, he's not Bill Walsh or, Andy Reid. We get that. But you're going to bring in Bill Belichick, right? I mean, that seems like, especially now that you're so invested in Dak. And let's face it, Dak over and over answers the bell in the regular season at a really high level, and he's proven that he can win big games, unlike Lawrence and Tua, who got paid this offseason in December. He just has to get hot like an Eli Manning or Joe Flacco to really kind of cement his legacy. That will always be a question mark, but I don't think there are any more question marks like compare Dak to Kirk Cousins. Like, I think there's a little bit of a gap there. I know their numbers are similar, but I think that's, especially as Kirk's getting older, Jared Goff, he's playing after we talk, but he doesn't move as well. I mean, Dak's really good. He's never going to be the second best quarterback, but you feel pretty good about just putting him in at number 8, and then all the character stuff and the intangibles and the leadership are a really big deal in the sport of football.
Yeah, no, there's no question that he is an adult. And I think from the very first year in the NFL, you always felt like you could trust Dak in the locker room to make smart decisions, stay out of trouble. And, it sounds like, that doesn't really matter. I mean, you could hear Tom Brady on the broadcast today. So much of it is being able to handle hard coaching, to get yelled at. I mean, I can remember during some cultural movements in America, Dak was front and center. I just think he is that soul of the franchise. Speaking of Brady, I always said when Tony Romo took the job, everybody fell in love with him. 3 years later, we're like, Brady's broadcasting career is going to be his playing career. You're going to just watch him work really hard. And you're going to say, he can't do this, can't do this, can't do this as a player. You look up, you're like, he does everything. I thought he was nervous today, especially in the first half. But my takeaway is, go to week 8. Tom's going to literally go home tonight and spend the entire night and the next day studying the film. So my take on Tom, everybody was talking about it. I thought he was really nervous to start. It was funny. I talked to him last week off the air and I said, listen, you're going to be nervous. I don't care what anybody says. You're not playing. You can't control it. It's just, and for the record, it is so hard to do well. You basically have to succinctly 300 times in an afternoon talk for 8 seconds. And you have no idea what you're going to talk about 10 seconds before you talk about it. It's a really hard job. And so that was kind of my take on Brady. You got any thoughts?
Yeah. I'm not going to try to be a hater. I admire Tom, everything he's accomplished in his career, people I know that know him, and I'm not trying to overreact to one game, but I thought he was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I just thought, he's very tight. He's with Kevin, who's been doing this since he was like 5, who's very smooth. Aaron Rinaldi. I mean, Rinaldi's one of the greats of all time. Tough spot. He's gonna have to find a lane.
Yeah.
Because I think the casual person, and if you're getting 20, 30 million people watching these games, most of them are not diehard football people, right?
Right.
They want to be entertained. Madden's personality, Gruden's eccentric craziness. That's not really going to be. Even Romo was just very excited, and like you said, everyone's turned on him. But he has a lane. I don't necessarily like. Is Tom? He didn't really let it fly today on Deshaun Watson, which I thought was a BP fastball. Though I don't know if that's going to be his thing. I just thought he was kind of tight, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But I don't quite know what's going to be like. I don't think people want, like, let the personality come out that everyone that you're Gronk and Edelman and these guys love you, like be one of the guys, which he obviously has in there. I just think he was kind of stuck in no man's land. And obviously I'm sure he'd over prepared. The majority of people text I'm getting, and I'm sure we'll see it tomorrow, people will be critical of him. It's a tough spot, but I'm interested to see what lane he figures out. Because today I thought he was kind of in no man's lane. And again, I like Tom. I'm a Tom Brady guy. I'm not rooting against him, but it was tough. I mean, it's a tough spot.
Yeah, no, it was. He was choppy, and he just didn't quite listen. It's. I've talked for a living. It takes rhythm. If I take 10 days off, I come back the following Monday, I'm rusty. Like I need an hour to get back into my rhythm. So it's not the easiest thing. Okay, I want to talk about the Bears game. First of all, the fact that they won a game and passed for 64 yards. So it was interesting. Belichick said something last week. I took the Titans to win that game, and basically I was on the right side. I felt for almost the entire game.
Same.
But Belichick said something this week, and I took it to heart. Belichick said I wasn't impressed. He was like 10 for 20. And I went back and I text somebody I know who's in the NFL who's been critical of him. And the big question with Caleb is high school and college. He can really get in the weeds with his accuracy. He can really get into the high grass. And if you recall, Mahomes could do that a little bit in his first 3 years, and then Andy would pull him back in. Mahomes would get really off mechanically. Stafford's done that in his career, where it's so easy for Mahomes and Stafford. They start side-arming 2 out of 3 throws. The mechanics get sloppy. And I thought with Caleb, he's got a defensive coach. So Mahomes has Andy. Stafford at one point had an offensive coordinator he really connected with. Now he has McVay. But I think with Caleb is when he gets sloppy mechanically, who brings him back on the fairway? Because I thought today he struggled at times to see things. I thought his decision-making late in the game and not making mistakes and taking what was given for him was fine. But all these guys struggled today. Bo Nix was as good as anybody, and he threw 2 picks. Yeah. What did you make of Caleb overall today?
Well, I think if you go back to Bill's comments, he's like, listen, I'm not being a hater, but I don't put anything into preseason. And when you're inaccurate in the preseason, do you know what hit me today watching about 10 games in the morning on different TVs and screens? You know how the NBA, once the playoffs start, you're like, what we just witnessed for the last 6 months doesn't even look like the same sport. That's kind of the preseason. I mean, the first 10 minutes of like 10 a.m. to like 10:30, you're watching the Steeler game, the Houston Indy game. Guys are flying around. I'm like, this doesn't even resemble what we just witnessed.
Right.
So the defensive game plans, all these defensive coordinators, even the average ones, are making $1.5, $2 million. They're paid a lot of money to do this. The physicality of the game ramps up. The question on Caleb, he is going to be able to make spectacular throws, though he wasn't doing that today. I think he was really rattled and his confidence was all shot. But can he just make basic throws from in the pocket? Whether it's a fastball or whether it's a layered throw, and it kind of unraveled on him fast. Now, Jeffrey Simmons is probably one of the better players that the casual fan doesn't know that much about because he plays for the Titans. You put him on the Cowboys or the Eagles or something, he'd be a star. And they were hitting his ass hard, and he was thrown off. And Will Levis bailed their team out because if Will Levis doesn't self-implode, the Titans not only easily should have covered, they should win the game. I mean, he looked like Daniel Jones there, but Caleb, he was atrocious today. I mean, he really was, which is fair because this is what Bill's an old school guy. Sean Payton's, all these guys that come from the 80s, the 90s, the Bill Parcells, they hate hype. You and I like some hype. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. Those guys do not like it because it doesn't mean anything once you kick off week one. And that, like, all that hype was meaningless today if on 3rd and 7 he's skipping a ball. And he was, and it unraveled fast. The arm strength, all the talent doesn't mean shit. And like you said, it gets back to Jaden Daniels. Like, beside his running didn't look great. Bo
Right.
Nix, who has an offensive play caller, now he was on the road, granted, looked
Right.
overwhelmed a lot of the time.
Yep.
It's hard. This is really, this is why I've said pump the brakes, especially on Caleb and the Bears. I know, like, Nick Wright picked him to win the Super Bowl. A lot of people are high. He threw that out there. I don't know if he actually picked, but my point is, he could make serious strides as the year goes on, and they could win 7 games. This is really, look at Sam Darnold. He's been in the league for like 7 years. It's taken him forever to figure it out.
Yeah.
This is not easy.
No, I said this. I did a piece for Fox Sunday, and I said, be careful on Caleb Williams. This is one of the best divisions. This is a franchise that ran Trubisky out of town, and he made the playoffs twice with Aaron Rodgers and Stafford in their prime. This media is rough. The weather gets rough by Thanksgiving. If they win 8 games and he gets better, take it. If you could take that today and say he's significantly better, we win 8 games, we finish 3rd, take it. Because what success looks like to Dak is not what success looks like. Years ago, you and I grew up, the hardest thing to do was hit a baseball. Now, that's still really hard.
Yeah.
It's still really hard. But quarterback now has entered that space because it's not a run-centric league. It's a 60-40, 62-38 passing league. And it's even Geno Smith, a veteran today. His best play was a run. Like, this stuff is hard. And I think we just have to understand. I thought all the quarterbacks looked overwhelmed. I thought Bo Nix had a little rhythm at one point in the game where I felt like Bo seeing the game. He wasn't doing much, but he was seeing the game. He was seeing the field, and he was facing a new defensive head coach. So all 24 points today were scored by defense and special teams. Will Levis, to me, is done. He's baked. I don't think his college game looks like his pro game. Doesn't see the field. Terrible judgment. I think Caleb's going to be fine. But to your point, he looked overwhelmed. And I think the other thing is, if you opened up on the road, it's different. Dude, he opened up in Chicago. The weather was perfect. I had a buddy at the game. Like, there was a lot of freaking heat on Caleb today. Like, a lot of pressure on Caleb.
Well, that's where if you take Bo Nix and you take Caleb, Bo Nix is in Seattle where the place is really loud and he can barely hear himself think. Caleb gets a pretty BP fastball, a 12 o'clock kickoff in Chicago. I'm a huge believer in 2 things. For young people, whether you're a professional athlete or just a normal person in society, confidence can be lost really quickly and it can be hard to gain. I would say, in your early 20s. And when everyone's looking at you and you start losing confidence, it can spiral. And the only thing you ever have to go back on is your experience. But as a young player, you don't have any experience. Like Geno today, you're watching early on, you're like, God, Seattle looks weird. He's been through it. Dak today. All these guys have so much experience that they don't freak out over one drive. They don't freak out over a bad quarter. And you just watch Caleb, you just felt it snowballing. And what does he have to go back on?
That's
Nothing.
Right.
And it's not like he could look over there and Bill Walsh is on the sideline and be like, listen, I've been doing this for 30 years, won a couple Super Bowls. I'm going to call 3 plays, get you a couple layups. And they were very scattered.
Yes.
They felt very, there was one point in time in that game before Will Levis just pooped down his own leg where you're like, are they going to lose 28-10 and just be the number one story of the day tomorrow morning, that the Bears and Caleb specifically are not nearly as good as we think? Because I really think that you can defensive turnovers. Like if they're playing if they're playing just Baker Mayfield or Geno,
they got blown out.
They get killed.
Yeah.
So, they get killed. And I'm not jumping on Caleb here, which I would imagine is going to happen a lot this week. I just think this is so much more difficult at the NFL level than college, even if you're playing at a high level of college. And Caleb was playing a lot of good teams in college. but the level of athlete, the level of speed, he just did the rhythm. I mean,
Well,
it was glaring.
and the level of coaching. There's no grad assistants on these staffs, man. You're talking about the very best. I mean, Jesus, you look at USC this year with the same defensive players, upgraded coach. I mean, there are bad college coaches. I mean, guys like Mike Zimmer are excellent, and he's been fired. Mike Zimmer is a great coach. So in the NFL, it's very rare when you get a Brandon Staley. You're like, okay, that guy's over his skis completely. Freddie Kitchens. Yep, that's not going to work. Overwhelmingly, almost everybody in this league is excellent.
Well, one of my favorite bets today was Tampa over Washington. Just one, I don't think Washington's any good. Tampa's made the playoffs for 4 years. They are loaded with NFL players all over the place. And Baker, and I was close to where you stood on him. The change he's had as just the way he carries himself, obviously the way he plays. Washington they just don't have the talent. And right. I think you saw all these 3 rookie quarterbacks. The difference of Jaden and the other 2, he can really take off. I mean, he can really run. And that kind of neutralized and kept the game somewhat close for a while. But these coaches are going to you're just going to end up in 3rd and long. And this is not college. Like, you're going to have to sit in there, and there's going to be, you don't have 7 seconds. There's going to be plays where you got to get rid of it in 2.5. That's why watching Deshaun Watson, who's been a pro now for a while, it's like he has no clock. It's like you either got to throw the ball away. I bet Tom Brady's in there thinking, like, what the hell am I watching? Get rid of the ball. I understand those young quarterbacks not knowing the time. To me, that's more than fair. I think it also shows how difficult it is for young quarterbacks. And I know a lot of listen, I was high on Denver. It's going to be a roller coaster ride for all 3 guys, which is more than fair in the history of the league.
It's time for this week's player I thought might give almost anything to redo his game, brought to you by Uber Eats. This week, Will Levis, Titans quarterback. Oh, brutal. Titans blew a 17-0 lead over Chicago. That was this week's Uber Eats Player of the Week. Get almost anything for game time delivered with Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order right now. I want to talk Raiders-Chargers. It was the most predictable, at least stylistically. It was the most predictable game. It was a rock fight. It was just physical, brutal, tough. I mean, it was not pretty. But my favorite part of this game is basically the same defense as last year. They were in the right spot. I mean, they had one kind of missed tackle on a play that ended up being a big play for the Raiders. But Justin Herbert goes 16 of 25 for 135 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. And I'm like, he's going to do that several times this year. And people are going to bang on Justin Herbert. I watched that game and I'm like, Harbaugh's looking at that talent. Pretty light at tight end and wide receiver. Not a lot of game breakers. Okay at running back. Better than average, maybe not great. Harbaugh looked at that game today and thought, and I think they're going to win this stylistically. This is how the Chargers will win. They'll ugly it up. Herbert won't make any mistakes. He'll make 4 to 5 big throws, no interceptions, make the right reads. It almost felt like Harbaugh, his first year at Michigan, taking over for Brady Hoke. He didn't have a lot of elite playmakers, but he won 10 games on just situational, field position, toughness. And then over the course of 2 or 3 years, he couldn't beat Ohio State. He was losing games you think they should win, but they didn't have NFL players. The Chargers, Bosa's great. Derwin James is fantastic. So is Herbert. Rashawn Slater's a good left tackle. And not a lot of guys everybody would vie for if they were on the market. I thought that game was exactly how you have to win if you're the Chargers with Harbaugh this year with that talent.
Yeah, I think if you remove the quarterbacks, they're the same team.
Yeah, that's right.
They're very similar. Herbert, I didn't even know his box score. I thought he made some big throws down the stretch.
He did.
He made some big throws down the stretch, and then I had the game on mute. Was it Dobbins busted the big run?
Yeah,
that is. Listen, their team is not going to be a sexy watch this year. And the Raiders, if they had Justin Herbert, would be the same thing. They'd have to win a lot of games, kind of like the Chiefs did last year. Mucky it up, ugly it up, and try to win 19-14, 19-17. And I think when you watch, let's look at that division, right? Like, I had either Denver or the Chargers making the playoffs. I kind of waffled back and forth. I think it is going to be difficult Now we'll have to see how the rest of the AFC plays out. It's obviously going to be hard for Denver with a rookie quarterback and playing on the road. The Raiders have no shot. Harbaugh does just because of his quarterback. I mean, the guy's talent. Some of these guys that hate on him, it's like, one, you are either just trying to be like counterculture and just sound different, or two, nobody in football because nobody thinks that. I mean, just listen to the way Jim talks about him. I think over the next couple years, I mean, we saw how Jim has built at Michigan. They're going to be a serious problem as he teaches Justin Herbert how to win in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're talent deficient.
Yeah,
clearly on offense. And the one thing as the season goes, and this goes back to the rookie quarterbacks, these defensive coordinators, I mean, they work 18 hours a day. They're going to get 9 guys in the box, and Herbert's going to have to beat them with kind of random wide receivers. Right. If they had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in their prime, to me, they would be a lock playoff team. But they had to pivot off those guys because of the money. But Jim's a winner. So betting against Jim, to me, seems moronic. I mean, it's not going to work. Now, is he going to win 10 games this year? I don't know. But he's going to have a chance to go above 500, I bet, when the dust settles come December.
How about Antonio Pierce punting on a 4th and 1 late in the game? And I thought it was interesting because I thought, well, that's what defensive coaches do. By the way, even Mike McDonald, the new Seahawk coach, in a win, super conservative down the stretch. Denver had a chance to get the ball back and win the game. It was like defensive guys. Oh my God. I'm watching Antonio Pierce. I'm like, dude, you can't be conservative with that football team. The only way the Raiders can win 6 games is big swings because you just don't. And by the way, teams with weak quarterback play will get worse over the season because the defense will be on the field for more snaps. Defensive players get hurt more than offensive players statistically in the league. So a team like the Raiders, you get to like week 4 to 5 to 6 when the defense is literally on the field the whole game, you're going to be losing guys left and right. You got to take swings.
I think one of the elephant in the room in that game, and you saw him a couple times on the sideline, is Devontae Adams on that team makes no sense.
None.
And if people still think he can play, his value has diminished because as time goes on, you make a lot of money and you don't produce it the same way. You're just not worth as much. But if you can get rid of him at the trade deadline for a 2nd and a 3rd, like to me, it's probably time to pivot.
NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. So fans have spoken. They want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings heard us. They're delivering. DraftKings Sportsbook's the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet just $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus 1 month of NFL Plus premium on us. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Real easy, 90 seconds. Use the code Colin. For new customers, will get you $250 in bonus bets, betting just $5. And 1 month of NFL Plus premium on us. Offer ends September 19th. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
I get not trading Max Crosby because those guys are hard to find, but a wide receiver, a team with no quarterback, it also shows you that Gardner Minshew, like there's such a difference. Sam Darnold, everyone hated. And rightfully, I mean, he was bad in his spots, right. But then look who believed in him. Kyle Shanahan signed him last March, and immediately Trey Lance was dead on arrival. His career ended the moment he signed. And then he spends a year, one thing he talked about is like, I saw Purdy work. Well, obviously Purdy's work ethic has to be elite for him to have success, right, with his physical tools. And he's like, God, it really opened my eyes. This is a 5th, 6th-year player saying he's watching a 2nd-year guy. He's never been around that. And his physical attributes relative to Minshew, both those guys were the bridge quarterbacks this offseason. It's not even in the same ballpark. Minshew's a great story. He's a good backup. If you are forced to start him week 1, and now it feels like a couple teams have been forced to over the course of his career, you're just done. Like your season is over before it even begins. And Sam Darnold, like, is he going to sustain this all season? I don't know, but his physical attributes, and clearly people like the guy, he just needed to get around some real offensive coaches. Now we see back-to-back years, Kyle Shanahan, and then Kevin O'Connell, he gets a chance to play. I understand he's playing the Giants and they suck, but Colin, he looked pretty good today.
Let's talk about that. He went 19 of 24. At one point, I think he was 10 for 10, 208 yards, 2 TDs. Yeah, it really touches on something. I always have sympathy for people like this. I got very lucky. My first job out of college, I was in Vegas, and it couldn't have been a better place for me to work. I got a really good news director who believed in me. I had good people around me. And if you look at my career, I've had really smart people, agents, content people. And my career wouldn't be like this if I didn't get people that supported me and believed in me. And I'm not saying, Adam Gase, I thought he would be good because Peyton Manning had said he was going to be good and it just didn't work. But I mean, he's been at the Jets, he's been at Carolina. It's like I have sympathy for people that I know who are talented. And I've worked with people in my business like this. And hell, you're a great example. Every one of my friends loves you. You've done great for us. You got let go by an AM radio station in the Bay. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's
They're
like
going under.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, at the volume, our business is basically finding people who we think are really good, and we think they're at a place that doesn't understand how good they are. You were one of them. So the thing about Sam Darnold is, look at who likes him. Shanahan liked him. Adam Gase actually liked him a lot early. Kevin O'Connell likes him. If you start asking around the league, I know when it was funny when Christian McCaffrey had a wedding, there was like, I saw 9 of the guys there. One of them was Sam Darnold. Like, players like Sam. And I thought today, if you watch that game, every time Sam went back to pass, you could literally see it as a viewer, as a consumer. Sam knew where he was going. He wasn't ad-libbing. Sam knew where he was throwing the football. And it's like, that's the difference. I mean, go look at Jared Goff with Jeff Fisher and then with McVay. He was a bust. He was a disaster. And then you're like, oh, shit, he's going toe-to-toe with Mahomes on Monday Night Football. What's going on here? So I watched Darnold. Their schedule's brutal. I think they're a 7-win, 8-win team. But when I watched them today, I'm like, oh, he finally got his kingmaker. Right?
It's funny. People ask me all the time, like, I want to get in the podcast business. Do you have any advice? I'm like, yeah, just find a Colin Cowherd. And then, that's all you need. Because like you said, I mean, players are no different than a lot of people in a lot of different industries. There are probably some really talented players on Carolina that no one's going to notice. Right. And look at Carson Wentz. He was out of the league. And then who was interested last year? Sean McVay. And what happened to him this offseason? Brett Veach and Andy Reid signed him.
Yeah.
So perception becomes reality. The NFL is a lot like a high school. People talk, fair or not, narratives become truths, and it's hard to shake it off. And it's rare that a guy like Sam Darnold truly gets like a cool opportunity. Like he has an opportunity if he plays really well. They just drafted J.J. McCarthy. They have no choice but to pivot unless they like win the Super Bowl or something. Who's to say the Raiders won't give him some money or a team like that this offseason?
Right.
And like, some guys are completely overwhelmed. Look at Trey Lance. He got drafted to Kyle Shanahan, and they're out. And then he goes to Mike McCarthy, who's great with quarterback. He's like, he's our third string quarterback. Like, I'm sorry, I'm out on him. Like, that's not meathead defensive guys not willing to like see your talent. Now, I do think we have historical similarities of guys that were high draft picks. I remember living in the Bay Area. They would talk about like Jim Plunkett, high draft pick, fell apart, and then the Raiders got him. We've seen Rich Gannon as an example. You see guys kind of bounce around. They get with the right fit, and they get with the right guy to believe in them. And the good thing for Sam is Kyle O'Connell are the same umbrella. Well, look around the league. There's like 17 of them all over the place.
Right.
So if you all know the offense, his demand, he doesn't have to do this every week. But if he can just prove to have them in the wild card conversation come after Thanksgiving, I think he's going to be a starting quarterback. I mean, Colin, I'm watching Bryce Young, and that's the organization clearly has issue. He looks completely overwhelmed. Deshaun Watson wouldn't be a starting quarterback long if his contract was. There are a lot of quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett, I mean, there are a lot, and I understand he won today, but he threw for like 120 yards. I mean, there are a lot of guys playing in this league today that just are not going to be playing for long. So when you can prove it, no one's ever disputed Sam's physical characteristics. And if you know the Shanahan offense, which I would say is one of the more complex, and now you know like the intricacies of O'Connell that brings some of McVay, they're all kind of interconnected. I think he's got a pretty bright future if he can just keep building on this.
Yeah, and he had some tight window throws, red zone throws.
He looked good.
I thought he looked really good. I want to talk about the Broncos and Seahawks because, again, I thought Bo had his moments. I'm watching Seattle, and I say this respectively to Pete Carroll. I think Seattle has elite talent. I just don't think people know the players. But Walker, their wide receivers, they have tremendous young corners. They got a consistent pass rush. They got the Murphy kid in the draft, the top defensive tackle. Fant left today. It's Gino is what he is. Like, he's a really solid, he's a great story. He is what he is. He's not going to lose you a lot of games. He's not going to win you a lot of games. But I'm watching that game today, and Sean Payton coached his ass off for a half. He got them. I mean, a lot of this was Seattle getting safeties, and it was quirky.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, by the second half, you're like, okay, now we're off script. And now Bo Nix is a rookie quarterback. And he just, that's the difference between a veteran Dak in the second half and Bo Nix in the second half. Bo's like, okay, now they adjusted. So I got everything on the script I figured out. Now it's all off script. And I'm watching that Seattle team, John. And I think you called them one of the surprise teams. I'll just say it right now. Maybe they're not Baltimore. I think they are really talented. They fly around the field defensively.
I actually was kind of on the other side, but their talent. My issue with them is they were poorly coached, but they've been winning 9 games.
Yes.
It's not like they've been winning 5. It's
and
like
a good division.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So how do they go from, do you think they could win 11? I still think their offensive line has some question marks. They got the 2 safeties. They got punked. Gino has his limitations, but you're right. I mean, Kenneth Walker, there's a chance at the end of the year he's a top 5 running back.
Yeah.
How about the catch Lockett made to seal the game? He's their 3rd wide receiver.
And he's been there. Jesus, he's been great for 10 years.
He's got to be one of the more underappreciated players of his generation. Might not even be close. I think I could play for my team any day. Now, if their defense is better, they still might be a 9-ish win team, but could they beat the 49ers in a game? Because they haven't beat the 49ers in 5 games.
Not with
They played
Gino.
them 2 years ago in the playoffs. Not with Gino. So if they can play at a more physical brand, my question marks, you never know with a coordinator going to a head coach. He's young. I think he's 37 years old. And their offensive coordinator, who we all loved in college, who was DeBoer's right hand, had never coached in the NFL. They showed his resume today. He was at Sioux Falls not that long ago. That's a pretty quick jump. Now, he clearly knows what he's doing, and so their coaching staff might just be better. I watched John Schneider's press conference at the end of training camp. You can tell he thinks they got something. He knows their team is talented, but like he thinks the coaching staff's pretty good. So like, can they beat McVay and Kyle? Can they split? Can they go 2-2? Because if they can, then maybe they're not 9-8, they're 10-7, and they're like the 6 or 7 seed. I would say that's possible. Not going to overreact to playing Denver, who it's just, you could tell they're a little talent deficient still with the rookie quarterback. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, he's an easy guy to root for. Gino's an easy guy to root for. I just wonder in Sunday night, Monday night games, in Tom Brady calling it, if you're both 4-1 or however the schedule, and you're playing the Rams or you're playing the Niners, I'm not picking Geno Smith, home or away.
Yeah. I will say this about Bo Nix, and I had talked about this because I saw him play live twice. He is much more mobile than people give him credit for. Way more mobile. He ran in for a touchdown today on a pump fake. He looks smallish. You don't think, 61 college starts. You don't see him as a great athlete. I thought today one of the interceptions was a great play, and I love the Seahawk corners. And again, they're all overwhelmed. They don't have a ton to work with. I don't know how good their offensive line is. I think Bo Nix is going to work. I don't think they won a ton of games, but when I watched him today, I never felt he was rattled. I thought he made 2 throws that were like rookie throws. In the second half, I'm like, oh, Jesus, Bo. But I kind of like bake that in. Like, I don't know. When I watched him today, I never felt he was, I kind of just, after watching Caleb, I'm like, Jesus, this is rough. I watched them and I was like, if you told me by Thanksgiving it all clicked, I'd be like, all right, I could see it.
Well, you know what? Where it set in with me is last night at 11 o'clock at night watching the Big Ten play. They had multiple Big Ten games going, Oregon and USC. Your Trojans look better in Oregon right now. That's just a fact.
Oregon's a mess.
There's a drop-off at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel has been a productive player, but there is a dramatic difference between Dylan Gabriel, who's probably not even a draft pick, and a guy that was just a top 15 pick, immediate starter week 1. Like, that's a pretty big deal, right? When you look at Oregon. I know they got up, their offensive line's a mess, but if your offensive line is a mess, and this goes back to Cleveland, if your quarterback can be mobile, you either got to do two things. What Peyton and Tom could do forever. They played with a lot of average offensive line. Get rid of the ball like that.
Yeah.
Or run around for your life. Lamar Jackson the other night. And you get caught like Deshaun Watson, you're kind of doing neither. Well, Bo Nix can scramble. Jaden Daniels can scramble.
Yeah.
So if your offensive line is going to suck and you're not going to pick you apart in the pocket really quick, you got to be able to move. And Bo's speed translates. Like physically to me, like talent-wise, everyone anoints Caleb as this all-time great talent. He's really talented. To me, like Josh Allen and John Elway are probably on their own little tier. But I think Bo Nix's physical attributes are like a plus characteristic.
Yeah.
Like they got that going. Now, he threw a pick in the red zone. Like it's hard. But yeah, I'm not out on him by any means. He's really grown on me. He's a guy that during the preseason, even today, like that's tough to go on the road against a defensive coordinator who's a head coach. They're flying around. You can't hear yourself think. Like it's a tough environment in those spots. Like this is back to Caleb and Bo. Their environments were completely different. One was home, one was like a catered dinner, and the other one was like make a 5-star meal. Here's mayonnaise and here's a piece of beef. You know, right. It's difficult.
I want to talk about Buffalo and Arizona. So I watched Kansas City and Baltimore play, and then I watched Green Bay and Philadelphia. So I see those 4 teams, and I see all this offense. And then I watch Houston today. It's just got nothing but ballers offensively. Then I watched Dallas today. And I'm sitting there looking around, watching Buffalo and Arizona. Kyler Murray's beyond clever. I mean, he's just a little pitter-patter.
He's a great watch, isn't he? I don't know how many games they'll win, but he's on TV. He's fun.
But I watch Buffalo, and I'm like, you're not Kansas City. You had a chance to beat Kansas City. They have added elements now between Worthy. They have a second tight end. They brought Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown. They still have Isaiah Pacheco. I'm like, no, Kansas City's got firepower. Dallas has firepower. Houston's got a lot of firepower. Baltimore's got firepower. Jordan Love's out for about a month, but Green Bay and Philly have firepower. We know the Rams and San Francisco will move the ball. I watched Buffalo today, and I'm like, it took them a while to get cooking. John, I don't know if windows closed, but I don't think they can keep up with a lot of these AFC teams.
Well, I would push back that I loved the Cardinals plus 6.5 because Kyler's such a difficult guy to play week 1 when you have no game experience. You're not used to the speed of the NFL, as we already talked to, in terms of your team. Like the speed of week 1 compared to like 2 weeks ago in a preseason game is night and day. So I give you a pass of just running around because they do have a good pass rush. They're just going to eat up a lot more immobile quarterbacks like Tua. And if we're going to give Baltimore credit, Lamar happened to pull stuff out of his you-know-what every other play because their offensive line isn't good. Josh is doing the same thing. And I think the question mark with both guys, by the end of the game, I'm looking up. I got him on a muted TV. They're wrapping his arm. I mean, he's just taking shot after shot. He is – I was too young to remember like the young, physical, dominant Elway, but that is as dominant of a physical specimen who can run and pass. Cam was always hit or miss with the pass.
Yeah.
As a runner, he's probably the most dominant runner of all time. Josh is the ultimate combo of them both because he's a better passer than Lamar. Lamar's faster than him. But, I mean, he can truck basically any linebacker or defensive back. You've been talking about this for a while. You just get worried when you play like that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get a broken arm or a broken clavicle. But I think that there's a grittiness to that team. Like, there was a moment you looked up, and it was like, are they going to get their ass kicked? And then boom, I had a buddy text. He's like, should I hammer the money line? You get them like plus 180 right now. I'm like, I don't hate it. And then boom, they scored 2 touchdowns. Yes. And then all of a sudden they had the lead. Now, granted, it was at home. But I thought once they kind of realized the speed of Murray, they sacked him a couple times in the second half. I think their front's going to be pretty good. And I'm just a Josh diehard believer. I mean, I think he's just been watching football now 30 years. I think he's one of the best talents I've ever seen. And he's just turned into a great player that he could Shakir, the Boise State wide receiver, is really good.
Yeah.
Their run game is the best it's been. And I do think they did show something last year. I'm with you. Like, can they beat Kansas City in a playoff game? If they played right now, Kansas City's a much better team.
It's funny. I think
there's a grittiness to the squad, though.
They were not very good on third down. It's funny. I looked at them today, and I just thought, I don't know if they can keep up. Now everybody goes, well, Colin, they scored 34 points. They're going to be fine. It's more than that. But, it's funny when I look at them, they only average, Cook only averaged 3.7 yards per rush, 3 for 9 on third down.
You know what they have going for them, Colin? Let's remove Kansas City, who is
Okay.
like the Jordan Bulls right now. The Bengals look like absolute dog poop today. I mean, what an awful. I mean, that's got to be the worst loss of the
Yeah.
day to lose to the Patriots at home.
So I think Houston, I think that
Okay,
win today was
they're
much
good.
more impressive than people give it credit for.
Totally agree. I think Indy's good.
Yeah.
I think that was a playoff level game between those.
Yeah.
Those are two good teams. The Steelers are going to have to win a lot of games, 18-12, right? The Browns have a ton of issues. We'll see the Jets Monday night. I know the Dolphins pulled out a win. I think Doug Peterson did a couple weird things play calling wise. That game was bizarre, but I am not a believer in the Dolphins. So one thing the Bills have going for them, texting with some people in Kansas City, they're like, God, Lamar's really hard to play, but can you play like that throughout the entire season? Now, obviously, you're not playing the Chiefs every week, so he's not going to need 150 yards. But whenever they play a good team, they're going to need Lamar to be this incredible. So you just look around the AFC. Like, I just think the NFC is better, right? I mean, Philly's still figuring things out. Dallas today, we'll see the Niners, we'll see the Lions. Like, I just think the NFC is pretty stacked. So you look for the Bills, you go, yeah, they got some young players they're relying on, but they still got the second best quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And a coach that kind of knows how to win. They've won the division 4 straight years.
Yeah.
And a group of kind of core guys. So I'm still a believer. I
No,
don't
I
know
mean,
if I'd pick them to win the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't pick them to beat the Chiefs, but I think they could beat any other team in the AFC.
yeah, I'm probably too hard on them. I found the game wildly entertaining. I guess it's funny. As I watched them, I kept thinking, God, they're so Josh Allen freaking reliant. And then I look at it and it's, in fairness, Coleman had 4 catches. Shakir's a clever player. Yeah, and you start looking at it, Cook. Yeah, I think their yards per catch were greater than I give them credit for. Um, the other thing about Buffalo, they're just in a lot of crazy ass games. Houston's in a lot of those. They are. Buffalo's just in a lot of big games, crazy games, and I think that's just sort of their hallmark now. We've seen them in so many memorable games.
Well, I think if you look at Buffalo, they play in the offensive version of the Steelers who play in the defensive version of the same game. It's like going back and forth. Anything could happen. Fumble sixes, crazy sacks, where Buffalo's games are just a lot of touchdowns and it's Josh scoring a lot. They're more likely to be in a game that's 33-29. And the Steelers are playing like, what a win by the Steelers. And they win 12-7. It's like, they're kind of, and they both win a lot of games. You trust. I just believe in this modern day, the way the sport's played, when your quarterback's that good, I just have to believe in you. And that's where you go, the Steelers, you go, God, it's TJ Watt, non-quarterback. Hell, he might be the best. I mean, there's a short list of guys that are as good as him or better than him. Their defense is so physical, but their quarterback situation, I would imagine Field starts again next week, but they got this Russell situation hanging over them where it's like, if you're the Bills, it's like, yeah, you could argue the best player in the history of our franchise. And they've had, Bruce Smith, Thurman, they've had great players, but like Josh, given his position and what he means over the last 3 or 4 years, it's not like those teams won a Super Bowl. Now they got there.
I should probably look at the Bills and have a different feeling, which is they were outplayed in the first half and they ended up winning the game. Like there were moments in that game I was like, God, Arizona's just playing them tough. And then at the end, they won the game. It's not like Chicago where Tennessee gave you the game. It was like Buffalo earned the win. I mean, they put up points. It is, Josh, 18-23. That's actually 23 attempts because he's so vital as a runner is a very reasonable number. Like I think Buffalo wants to become less Josh centric, but it's hard.
They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball. Today they got down.
Yes.
Anytime you get down in a game, even in the NFL, like you looked around beside the Saints and the Panthers, most of these games are relatively close.
Yeah.
Even when it's 14-7 or 14-3, I mean, you're a play away from being right back in it, but you kind of have to get a little pass happy when you're down 17-3 at home late in the second quarter. And then they did, and it worked. And then you just double down on what's working the rest of the game. But
yeah,
you just worry. To me, him and Lamar, like I understand this isn't 1987 and Ronnie Lott hitting you every play, but you're still getting hit pretty hard. And these guys have never been faster. I would imagine the body fat on the average defender has never been lower.
Right.
So the compact nature of these guys and the speeds have never been faster. Both of them are, similar age, 27 to 29 years old. You just wonder, like, how long, and I don't blame them. How would they not be confident running? Because they know it works. But one time you're going to get a hit and you're not going to get up and something's going to be shot. We've seen it happen to Rodgers earlier in his career.
How
All of a
about
sudden, the
Drew
clavicle breaks
Bledsoe?
and you're done.
Drew Bledsoe almost died on a football field when he got laid out. Drew Bledsoe, 6'5.5", 230. I mean, it's
Totally.
I mean, Cam Newton's career at 32, he was done. Cam's huge. Now for a segment called Making It Look Easy, brought to you by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Today, Josh Allen made it look easy. 4 touchdowns total, 271 total yards. Just like Josh made it look easy, Morgan & Morgan make it so easy to submit a claim. They have over 100 offices nationwide, more than 800 lawyers, with over $15 billion recovered for over 300,000 clients. Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. Morgan & Morgan been fighting for the people for over 35 years. If you're ever injured, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound 529 to check out America's largest injury law firm. Winning in the NFL is hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy.
Do you think you're I kind of like your thing about by the second year Thanksgiving, it's like, yeah, we're kind of out. And the Panthers thing, I know they got a lot of
no, Levis, Bryce Young, I watched today. I'm like, I don't think it works.
This is why I like the Saints. I'm like, people are hard on Derek. He was bad for a lot of last year. Well, he gets a Shanahan guy. When he gets a good offensive coach, I think they got a good defense. I'm like, you watch. The Saints were my pick to win the division. Now, I understand they're playing the Panthers, but what did Derek Carr look like today? Really good.
Yeah.
Threw 3 touchdowns. He looks good. And Bryce Young looked like
lost
someone that shouldn't be on a field. Physically, he's the smallest looking guy in the league by a mile at that position. Because even Kyler, at the moment's notice, he can take off. Bryce can't. Arm's not great. And then he's clearly not that accurate. So
that's right. Today
what's he got going for him?
Well, Will Levis today, there was a play when Will Levis was rolling right, and he is too muscular. He was rolling right, and he should have just rolled and thrown it. He rolled, sat, and I'm like, Will, you got to throw on the move. You can't set every time you throw the football. You got to be able to run and just sling it. And I watched Will Levis today. He's too rigid. He's too tight. He's not fluid. He's not going to make it in this league.
Didn't the GM tell you that his pictures at the combine were like, what is this guy doing? Like, get out of the weight room, bro.
Dude, he's not a fluid thrower. Everything is just like solid. Everything's mechanical. He's not going to work in this league. Everything needs setup, and he's got these weird ticks when he throws it. It's like he looks at himself in the mirror too much. He likes to look pretty when he throws. Dude, sometimes this shit's ugly. Move, throw it. And Bryce Young, to your point, I thought he was incredibly accurate. He's not.
No, not even close.
He missed 2 guys today by 8 yards. Missed them badly. It's like, okay, you can't. That's the NFL. And Caleb, by the way, missed a couple of open guys. That was a little problematic. But Bryce Young, I'm like, Bryce, you don't have the size. You have to be accurate. That's it for you. Like Bo Nix has to be accurate. He's not 6'5" and running over people. Will Levis, too mechanical, not going to work. Daniel Jones, too mechanical, doesn't see the field, not going to work. Bryce Young, small, not as accurate as I thought.
I just think it's unraveling on him. Last year they fired all these coaches, get a new guy in, and then today I don't think it could go any worse. Because even the Giants, like, they get their ass kicked. Everyone thought Daniel Jones is awful. People are like, oh, let's give Bryce a kind of a mulligan. He gets his offensive play caller. Before you even blink, it's 20-0. Balls are flying over. Honey Badger and all the DBs are laughing. I mean, they weren't even close. And that's the thing, like Deshaun Watson's shoulder injury. Is he trying to throw every ball 75 yards past? Like, I give Caleb his first NFL game. Like, yeah, some balls flying all over the place. Game 1. Deshaun, even Bryce, like, you got a full season last year and you've played this team before, but that confidence goes, you start questioning yourself, and then all of a sudden, it's like a golf swing. If you start guiding it, the ball is going to go out of bounds. Just let it rip. Dak Prescott is just letting it rip.
Yep.
Doesn't mean every pass is going to be perfect, but you can't be thinking. And you watch Bryce, it's like he's totally thinking, and then his physical skills aren't great. And it just goes, woof. This is, I think the Panthers are going to be really, really bad. Because
Yeah.
that division, I know Atlanta lost today, but I'll give Atlanta credit. They were flying around hitting people pretty hard.
Yeah.
Tampa's pretty loaded with talent.
Yeah.
Saints are going to be solid. Everyone thinks that division's going to suck. I'm actually on the opposite. I think it's going to be pretty competitive beside Carolina. Like, who are they beating out of those three teams? I mean, that could be an 0-6 in the division.
John Middlekauff. I'm going to go watch Lions-Rams every Sunday, at least an hour, chop it up. Former NFL scout. His podcast is 3 and Out. Well, we got one in the books, my man.
And we do. And the Trojans look like a playoff team early on, Colin. They really, I would never have said that 2 weeks ago, but how do you deny it now?
You know what you notice about USC is D'Anton Lynn is the defensive coordinator. They went and found like guys who had been head coaches. I mean, they literally improved on every coach in the staff defensively.
They look good.
And you know what they do defensively? They don't give you any cheap stuff. They don't blow any coverages. Like half of what coaching is about, are you lined up in the right spot? In the last 4 or 5 years, you're like, Jesus, we just don't have the guys in the right. I said this, a screen pass the last 2 years before this year, a screen pass against USC might as well have been a double reverse. They were completely flummoxed by basic, like jet sweeps, screen passes. They were out of sorts. You're not going to fool them. Nothing you can do offensively. You can tell they're really well drilled. They play fast. They play smart. They're lined up. Sometimes I think people forget this. In every industry, they're bad pilots. I mean, Sully Sullenberger, when he landed that plane on the Hudson, not every pilot can do that. That is a top 1% pilot. I've had multiple doctors in my career, like all of us. I've had bad agents. I've had bad attorneys. I had a bad doctor. Like, just because people make a lot of money, you start looking at some of these coaches, especially at the college level. John, there are bad coaches. USC had one the previous 2 years. I don't think they have great talent. I don't think their defensive talent's close to Georgia or Ohio State.
No.
They never. I've watched every snap from 2 games. I've yet to see them in the wrong spot.
To me, what jumps out, their skill guys look a lot better. And I don't follow recruiting that close, so I don't know all these guys beside the one little returner who's obviously pretty dynamic.
Ranch, yeah.
But their group of wide receivers and running back, they just look like a well-coached, explosive unit. If they were playing Oregon this week on a neutral field,
they'd blow them out.
What would the line be? How could you give USC points? Everyone would hammer USC.
Right.
I mean, they would beat Oregon today. We'll see how that plays out in 3 months, but right now they are a better team than Oregon. Who would have thought anyone would be able to say that? Even if you were, like yourself, a believer in where they were headed. Think how crazy and fast that turned. In 14 days.
Yeah. And it's funny about the transfer portal. They did a really good job. They went and got 2 kids from Oregon State, brothers, LA kids. It was like really smart. A middle linebacker and a safety, brothers, the best 2 Oregon State defenders. They went and they used their money in the transfer portal smartly. They just went and got a lot of solid guys, that 2 from UCLA, 2 from Oregon State, players who had played together on defenses that got along. So it was like the chemistry they weren't like 4 guys from 4.
It wasn't a mercenary signing guys left and right that didn't know each other.
2 UCLA guys from the secondary, a couple of Mississippi State guys, a couple of Oregon State guys. So it's like the team, it's very unified. There is no superstar, no Superman. You can just tell the team. You watch the sideline for USC. It's like these guys are all like, were in the same high school class 4 years ago. They like each other. Yeah. You can now
they got a good vibe. They got a good vibe.
Really good vibe. It's a very unified vibe. Good stuff. All right, buddy.